Thank you, everybody. So I don't have any thunderstorms, tornadoes, and/or lightning at the start, but I certainly have a topic that I think is going to turn the world of racing upside down over the next number of years. But I want to start with a question. And that question is based off, I think, changes that we've seen within the world of human performance and the lack of changes that I think we've seen in equine performance over the last number of years. So over the last 18 months, I've been doing a lot of work within the equine space, and that's led me to learn a lot, perform a lot of research about what has changed, what's happening, the dynamic that we're seeing within this industry today. And what you can see here, and I think much of this is already evident for anybody that's a fan of American football, of soccer, of rugby, of basketball, or even of athletics. Over the last 20 to 30 years, we have seen phenomenal changes in human performance. So whether that is the speeds that athletes are running at, whether that's the strength or power that athletes are exhibiting, whether that's the resilience or the pure athletic capabilities that are being delivered in competition, they have changed drastically. And these examples here from professional soccer show exactly what that looks like. 30 to 50% changes in high-intensity running distance in competitions. 60 to 80% increases in high-intensity sprints or total sprints during games. And even like maximum speed scores of 10 to 15% more over the last 20 years in human performance. And this is not just in soccer. We see this in the Olympics. We see this in track and field and athletics. We see this in American football and basketball. Yet when we look at what's happened in the world of equine performance over the last number of years, we don't see those changes. We look at the Kentucky Derby in 1973. The time to win that race is still the record. We are not seeing the same type of changes in equine performance that we're seeing in human performance. And I suppose the question for you guys that are closer to this and are involved in this industry every day is why? And I think what we're going to talk about today hopefully gets to examine that and look at that a little closer. And my own career working in professional rugby and now working across sport all over the globe, I think we have the answer to that. And I wanted to share that with you. So I started this company for a very specific reason. I was working in professional rugby, collecting huge amounts of data on our athletes from everything from how they're training on the field, how they're performing in games, how we're treating our athletes, how they're recovering, how they're developing, what their strength and fitness looks like. And our ability to weaponize that, our ability to understand how is what we're actually doing in training every day impacting what happens in games was incredibly limited. We had no ability to be able to take that information, turn that into insights, and understand what aspects of what we're doing is actually working. And the evolution we were seeing was that there was huge money being invested in team performance. There was new technology for wearable sensors for us to put on our athletes. There was coaching tools, there was medical tools, there was testing devices. And I think we're seeing exactly the same thing in the world of equine performance. You only have to walk outside the conference hall to see the technology companies here that are trying to sell their wares to you. But our ability to bring that together and turn that into insights just wasn't there. And as hard as that problem was when I started this company in 2014, at that point in time, we were collecting on average about 95,000 data points per athlete per year. Last year, we ended up reaching over 230 million data points per athlete per year. So imagine how hard it is to find the insights and the data that's been collected, that's been stored across multiple different systems, when it's 95,000 per athlete. When we start moving towards this end of the spectrum, it becomes a completely different problem. And that, I suppose, delivery of those first-generation point solutions to allow us to store our medical data, to allow us to store our training data, to allow us to store our high-performance information, to allow us to store our scouting information, our strategic, our technical, our tactical information. These systems, whilst they allow us to instrument our world and allow us to quantify what we're doing more, they actually compound the problem because they create these huge treasure troves of data that don't talk to each other, that don't allow them to be connected, and don't allow us to actually be able to deliver a return on investment. And for this very reason, the entire industry of human performance has moved from a state where we value data collection, that people want to invest in more tools to collect more information, that we've actually transformed to moving to a world where people care about insights, they care about connectivity, they care about being able to bring all of that information together to be able to join those dots and understand what that information means. That's for that reason we have created what we call the intelligence platform. We've spent the last 15 years developing this capability to be able to collect and collate all of the data from every aspect of high performance, but pull that together instead of having a fragmented data landscape to have a shared data landscape. Instead of having fractured decisions, we have shared decisions. We have shared intelligence that allow us to understand and evaluate and identify high performance, that allow us to be able to control talent development, that allow us to be able to create linkages between what we're doing and things like player health or player performance and outcomes. Today, we work with over 2,000 teams and leagues globally, and we power data collection for over 250,000 athletes. Within that, we work with some of the biggest leagues in the world. We provide all of the tooling across every team in the NFL to manage player health and safety. We track all of the medical and injury information across every athlete and every team within the NFL. We work with the Premier League, helping them to power their talent development ecosystem across not just the top 20 Premier League teams, but across every team in UK football, and help them to collate data on athletes from the age of 8 years old all the way through to the end of their professional careers. We work with Major League Soccer, powering things like athletic pathways and managing their entire competition, again, from their youth ecosystem within MLS Next all the way through to their semi-professional competition at Next Pro, and all the way through to MLS, the professional tier competition as well. What I wanted to get into today is to showcase what are the types of use cases that we see in human performance that the world of equine performance can lean into now, and that can lean into to gain a real competitive advantage. And the insights that I'm going to show you have become table stakes within the world of human performance today. They're the types of things that every team and every league globally now has the capabilities of doing. So for example, we can track our athletes all the way through from the age of 8, 9, 10 years old, and we understand exactly how many of those we expect to progress at each stage of our academy, our youth development systems, to make it through the professionalism. From the work that I've been doing and the conversations I've been having within the equine world, there aren't breeders or trainers that know this today. They don't understand how many foals are coming into their system, and then how many of those are actually progressing through, how many are making it to the end. This is simplistic types of analytics, but being able to understand that if you take 100 athletes into an academy system, that 7 of those, or 8 of those, or 10 of those are going to make it to the professional system. That is important because as we make changes to our curriculum, as we make changes to our development environment, we need to know whether that's making the problem better or worse, whether it's helping us to improve our ability to develop talent or not. We have the ability to be able to understand what influences progression. So we can take all of those myriads of data sources. We can take every piece of training information. We can take every piece of demographic information about the athlete. We can take every piece of testing data, every piece of medical data, every piece of recovery data, and we can start to understand which ones of those matter most. Which ones of those actually impact whether that athlete is going to make it to the professional game or not. And as we push through this, we can actually look at this differently at every phase of the development of that athlete, because what's required at the age of 8 or the age of 9 in terms of the development characteristics that are needed to underpin professionalism are completely different than what's needed at 16, 17, 18 years old, whereas we're focusing on foundational components of athleticism with younger athletes. And as we get towards the competitive world and as we get towards the expectation that they're turning professional, we need to focus on technical aspects, tactical aspects, aspects that are going to impact them when they're on the field and in battle. We have the ability to understand whether our approaches are working or not, so we can actually set benchmarks and standards for every single characteristic about high performance at every phase of the athlete's development. We can also test them at multiple times throughout the season and understand, are the things that we're doing actually working? When we hire a coach and we put them out on the practice field, they develop a practice plan. They have a specific rationale of qualities, principles, and the outcomes that they're trying to influence. The question is that working? Because when we look at the scores that we're seeing from the equine world and we look at the lack of change in actual performance, we look at the lack of change in top speed, we look at the lack of changes in terms of the performance metrics that will win you a race, we're not seeing changes happen. The question is why? Why is it when we're spending all of this money on new wearable technology? Why is it when we're spending all of this money on medical welfare and different types of interventions and treatments? Why are we spending money on fancy trainers when we're not getting an output that actually makes a difference? We have the ability to then start leveraging analytics and AI to understand, based on where an athlete sits at every phase of their athletic development, where are they strong and weak? Based on the characteristics that we know are going to influence whether that athlete makes it to professionalism or not, where are they strong and weak, and then how do we cultivate their development to improve the qualities in areas that they lack? We also then can start to project out how likely is that athlete to make it to professionalism. So we understand, are we spending our money in the right areas? Should we double down on certain athletes and release other athletes and help them, move on with their career outside of sport? But having the ability to understand how likely those athletes are and then how our interventions are changing that is fundamental to how we progress. We have the ability then, based off all of these insights, to know where to set our benchmarks and how to be able to measure every single day where an athlete sits, how far off are they from where they need to be, and how likely are they to get there. And we can share this with them. We can help them to understand what their journey should look like. We can help them to understand what they look like today and what they need to do to be able to get themselves to professionalism. We can put them in control. From here, then, we allow this to actually to manifest itself, not just with the athletes, but with the coaches themselves. They understand every aspect of what's happening. We can use technology to individualize how we're treating them, individualize how we're training them, to help them to understand every aspect and every facet of high performance and how we're going to change that. And I think that these types of insights are the ones that are lacking within our industry today. I think when I look at the world of equine performance, it looks like the same place that human performance in professional sport was 15 years ago. We have a generic program for how we train. Every horse gets the same treatment. Every athlete gets the same treatment. We have no way of benchmarking and measuring and understanding and really looking at it and quantifying objectively and saying, will this horse make it to Tier 1 success or not? And if so, how many Tier 1 races can we expect him to actually win? And until we get to this point where we actually know what those qualities and characteristics are, we're fooling ourselves with the money that we're spending in this industry. And I believe that this is simple. I think we can very, very quickly take the learnings that we've taken from the human performance world and apply them to equine performance. We can look at progression rates for every stage of an equine athlete's career. We can start to analyze all of the masses of information that are being collected. And in many cases and many places, the data being collected in the equine world is more robust and higher quality than what we have in the human performance world. We have access to bloodlines, genetic information. We have access to different types of testing that within human trials, the invasive nature of what happens within the equine world just wouldn't be allowed. So the detail that we actually have and the backlog of information that's been stored in this industry will allow us to do things that we've never been able to do in the human performance world, and to have a level of, I think, precision within the analytics and the insights that just haven't existed to date. We will have the ability to come in and actually look at this and develop the same type of scorecards. We can tell where horses are strong and weak. We can then start to individualize their programming. We also will have projections in terms of the success of each of those individual horses, and helps to understand where should we be doubling down, where should we be spending our money, and who are our high quality assets that we have in hand today. Again, we can leverage the technology that's already been built to be able to set those benchmarks and understand where every single athlete sits and how we progress them to success. My belief is very, very simple, and it's that tailored, data-driven equine player pathways can transform the industry. I think they would have the ability to provide trainers and breeders with a significant advantage over competitors who are still adopting very, very traditional approaches. And I suppose the question to anybody here is, who wants to gain a competitive edge? We're very, very excited about the role that we can play in this industry. We're very excited about what we can take from the world of human performance and how we can take that to the world of equine performance. But thank you.